Hello friends, so today's video is going to be a list of some adult fantasy book recommendations that are not Brandon Sanderson books. I've done quite a few of these videos already. The reason for doing this is that one, I talk about Brandon Sanderson's books quite a bit on my channel as I do really love them, so I like occasionally dedicating entire videos to adult fantasy that isn't Sanderson to kind of offset a little bit. I also know some of you like me have read a lot of Sanderson, so now you're looking for something else. A lot of you maybe just Sanderson's not your cup of tea, you're looking for something besides Sanderson, or you've been recommended Sanderson enough times, you're looking for something different. Hopefully, because so many of the books I'm going to mention are different from each other, you'll find something on this list that piques your interest. And if you're looking for more recommendations after watching this video, I'll have my previous videos linked. Jumping into it, I'm going to start with two authors you have likely heard about before, but maybe you just haven't looked into all that much, and so I wanted to give a little bit more insight into them. And those two authors would be Robin Hobb and John Gwen. So Robin Hobb, people talk about all the time. Her writing is quite different from Brandon Sanderson's. So if you are one of the people that has tried Sanderson and it's not for you, I'd say give Robin Hobb a try as far as the kind of classic or more talked about authors go. Her writing to me feels a little bit closer to the classic fantasy feel. There's more of a formality to it, but it is incredibly masterful. Her character work is phenomenal. A lot of people recommend starting with the Farseer trilogy as it is the first of the Realm of the Elderlings series. You can also read Live Ship Traders first if you would like, as they go with different characters. One focuses on one character named Fitz, and it is first-person perspective, and then you have the Live Ship Traders, which is it honestly reminds me in a lot of ways of Game of Thrones. You get a lot of different characters, and it is very character-focused, even though it's third person and it is multiple perspectives. But the way that the characters are written, their interactions with each other, the things that intrigue you and make you want to turn the page, like I said, remind me of Game of Thrones, where I would say Farseer is kind of an intimate character study. Even though I was presenting that for people who maybe aren't as big of fans of Sanderson's, there are still a lot of things to like if you are a Sanderson fan and you're wanting to try Hobb. One particular thing I think a lot of people are going to appreciate is the ways in which certain things are related between one series to the next, much like Sanderson's Cosmere. There are bits and pieces because it's almost like this shared world where you're going to see, oh, this detail over here, is that this person or is that a reference to this group of people? And so those little details I think are really appealing to a lot of fans of the Cosmere. With John Gwen, he has several different series. I've read the first book in The Faithful and the Fallen. That one definitely leans into kind of your classic fantasy tropes and sort of the chosen one type of story, but what adds a little bit of its own flair to it is that there's also almost a chosen good and chosen evil feel to it, and so you don't really know who is actually going to come out on top. There are so many people who are huge fans of that series, and there's actually another series following that one. The series that I'm going to be recommending, though, would be the Bloodsworn series, which starts with Shadow of the Gods. Its sequel recently came out called Hunger of the Gods, and this is a Norse-inspired fantasy world. It is not related to his other series, so it does stand by itself. You don't have to read his other series first unless you'd like to go in chronological order of publication. Shadow of the Gods, while having these nods to Norse mythology and just in general a very Nordic feel, is still its own story. It's cool because of the lore within the books. You every now and then will be like, oh, that was very much influenced by this particular story involving Loki, or some of the ways in which magic is shown to the characters or the stories that are passed down. You can see the influence. However, it is its own unique fantasy story, its own unique fantasy world. In the first book, I was really surprised because it is multiple perspective. There's 3 main characters, and generally speaking, when we have multiple perspectives, there is one character that tends to steal the show. There's one character that you like the most. And at different points in the book, I was more interested in one character and then I'd become more interested in this character and then this character. So it was kind of evenly divided. In the second book, the perspectives expand and you actually get more villainous perspectives. And John Gwen does write pretty good villains. And I would say in this book in particular, in Hunger of the Gods, what made it more compelling is that one of the characters you actually completely understand their motivations, and so there's a lot of gray morality in the story. And then there's one character who, while being more villainous in nature, actually reminded me, and I've seen a lot of other people make this comparison as well, to Glocta from Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. So if any of that, if you're familiar with First Law, if you like Nordic or Norse mythology inspired stories, definitely try Shadow of the Gods. The next two recommendations are completely different from the first two, and we have the Married to Magic series and the Regency fairy tales. So both of these series are actually series of standalones. You can pick up the books in these stories, and while they all take place in the same world and there are little hints about one connecting to another story, they all do stand by themselves. These are all kind of fairy tale-esque love stories. The Regency fairy tales, as you might expect, has that Regency romance feel. They're very wholesome and very sweet and very charming and silly. The first one is my absolute favorite, Half a Soul. It's one of my favorite books that I've read this year. It's so delightful, it's so cute, and it will probably just put you in the best of moods. Plus, it's very short. And a lot of fantasy books, like Robin Hobb and John Gwen, works by them. A lot of fantasy can be really long. So it's nice to have something that's short, and it's nice to have something that's a standalone. And if you want to keep going, you can. And if you're like, no, I'm good with this one for now, you can do that as well. The Married to Magic series, as you would expect, there is the marriage of convenience trope. I know a lot of people love that trope, not just in romance, but in fantasy as well. You see a lot of times where, for the good of the realm, these two individuals have to be married. And then you naturally will get them having to learn how to work together. Maybe they butt heads initially, so maybe it's also kind of enemies to lovers. Or sometimes they get along well and there isn't chemistry, but then seeing as they slowly get to know each other and care about each other, like that can be something a lot of people enjoy seeing. And so the books that are out thus far, I've read the first two. They're going to be very light as far as the commitment to paying attention to, oh my gosh, this world building detail and this world building detail. It's fantasy light in that you don't have to stress about the world building. I wouldn't say it's fantasy light as in there's no fantastical or very little fantastical elements. There's elves and fairies and things like that. It's just not something where you're gonna have to take in this whole new world and this new magic system and really have to write notes down and keep track of what's what. You don't have to do that. So they're refreshing, they're fun, they're sweet, they're cute, they're heartwarming. After that, we have the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. This probably does not need much introduction. I think most people are aware of this story. I would say the thing that makes N.K. Jemisin stand out quite a bit is that her books are very thematically driven. And a lot of fantasy can offer so many different things. It can be the fun adventure story, or it can be that really deep moving, thematically driven story. And I think that N.K. Jemisin definitely has themes at the forefront while also having a really intricate and interesting world. In the first book, we are seeing that this entire society, this entire world is kind of on the brink of collapse because there is this planet that seems like it can very easily have these natural disasters that would bring society to its knees. And so people have had to barely scrape by during these 5th seasons, these seasons that essentially wipe out the population. Very few people survive, and then those who do have to sort of repopulate and plan on there being this next 5th season. And there are magic users that can contribute to these 5th seasons occurring, and so those individuals are very much mistreated. And how you see that mistreatment utilized to put those themes in the front, to put light on what is being discussed, I think it's something a lot of people can really connect with. So if you're somebody who likes a lot of literary fiction, if you're somebody who maybe doesn't want the fun, doesn't want the cute, but wants to be really moved or wants to dissect something, I would say the 5th season is probably the book for you. Last for today, I couldn't help it. I have to recommend some T. Kingfisher. I have fallen in love with T. Kingfisher as an author this year. I have enjoyed everything by her that I've picked up. My favorite is still Nettle and Bone, but what's great about T. Kingfisher, I was actually chatting with some friends about this over on World Hoppers, this collaborative channel that I run. I'll have it linked if you're interested. But we were talking about how T. Kingfisher is a jack of all trades. She can deliver a story that is so drastically different from the last story that she's written. So Nettle and Bone comes across like a grim fairy tale where it has these fairy tale elements to it, but it also has this darkness to it, and it also has some very interesting humor, which was very appealing to me. Then you have something like Paladin's Grace, which is fantasy romance, and it's completely different, and you have these characters that are kind of beaten down just by life and the things that have been thrown at them, and they meet each other. They're actual adults with baggage. You start to appreciate that element of adult fantasy when you actually have adult characters. And then you have a horror fantasy story through What Moves the Dead. This is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher. These are all so drastically different from one another. The thing that will be the same throughout is you get that classic T. Kingfisher humor that I've already started to see and appreciate and love. You're gonna get that here and there in, I would say, all of her books. I can't say that definitively because I haven't read everything by her. But she's very clever and she's very cheeky. And I like that you have so many different options. I know she has some other ones that definitely lean more horror. I know that she's got some great YA fantasy that a lot of people really love. She just has a full range of different kinds of stories. And so if you're looking for a new author where you have all these options and you have this potential that if you like something, there's so many other things you can check out, then T. Kingfisher is for you. That's it for some adult fantasy recommendations that aren't Sanderson. Like I said at the beginning, I will have my other videos in the description bar down below if you'd like some more suggestions. Of course, feel free to leave your own suggestions in the comments down below. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.